This is the Unshadowed Thought Podcast with James Hall. This podcast is dedicated to Michelle Goyevich, Ed White, Caitlin Treacle, and I Chan, and also all the others that have lost their life as a direct result of psychiatric harms. Alright, welcome back. And today I'm going to talk about how I kind of see the podcast going in the future and what you could expect to get out of it. It'll take a few turns. We'll look at what's out there right now and what we listen to and hear, which I'm really disappointed with on a lot of levels, but on another level, there's some stuff I find that's really fantastic. So I'll kind of cut through that, and you might find my thoughts insightful, maybe not. And then after that, I'll talk about... Actually, we'll switch this up. First thing I'm going to talk about is what I'm looking to get out of this podcast and what you could expect going forward. There's a certain amount of kind of dialogue that I have, and there's content for that runs its course after you listen to me blather on for eternity. I'll eventually run out of stuff, well, at least stuff that's important to us as harm survivors, psychiatric survivors, or people that want to keep themselves safe, happy, and healthy in the world out there and are interested in listening to kind of gain some truth and some wisdom on what that really looks like versus all the stuff that's portrayed to us in the media, and that's important. So I'll kind of jump right into it. My perspective on media, podcasts are included in that, are that at this point in my life, I've seen so many narratives and so much groupthink that I'm absolutely sick of it. So the question then becomes, right, as Americans or people participating in Western ideology, what does it even look like to not have an interested narrative, meaning someone that's getting paid to tell you something, or someone that has an ideological agenda that they're trying to push to you, to where, they're trying to influence your thoughts and get you to do things or think a certain way, and then you communicate those ideas to other people or do things that ends up benefiting their ideological place or whatever. We all have ideas. We all are ideological. I'm highly ideological. But the difference that I all claim is that I'm strictly trying to do it to benefit everybody else and myself. I'm really not doing anything in my life at this point to... Let's see. In the last podcast I talked about virtue, so step back there a little bit, and I'll probably frame a lot of the things I say around that. I'm not doing anything that selfishly benefits me and doesn't benefit anyone else, right? If there's anything like I'm trying to be healthy, happy, and energetic, why is that? It's for my family, it's for my friends, it's for this community, because when I take care of myself, everyone else benefits, because that's how I choose to spend my time, right? And I want to directly benefit others as well, not so I can tell them what to do with their time or tell them to do with the benefit that I give them, but strictly because I think as people, the healthier, the happier we are, the more we'll kind of congregate together and help each other out, as long as it's truly healthy, happy, right? Like when I was super stressed out and then I took a benzodiazepine to relieve that stress, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better, right? That wasn't a true happy or healthy. And in fact, I knew I was dysfunctional at the time when I was doing that. I just maybe didn't admit it, or maybe you do the same thing and you don't admit it. But the whole point of the podcast and thinking differently is to start admitting those things to ourselves and to others and get to the reality of the situation, because so many of us have been so deeply harmed, traumatically and otherwise, that we see the error of our ways, and we're trying to gain some wisdom from that, move forward. So when I talk about trying to benefit myself and others, that's what I'm looking at. I want people to live happy and healthy lives, and there's an exclusivity to that as well, is that I want others and what I want for myself is that everyone is able to be free thinking. They think for themselves and then make any decisions that they want in line with that as well. Even for me, I've thought about it for a long time. Some people want to be angry and violent, and that's how they want to exercise their freedom. That's okay with me. Does it mean I won't defend myself? No, it doesn't mean that, right? Then it would be my free choice to defend myself against that, right? There's, for every thesis, there's an antithesis, or there's a converse action that free-thinking people would do, right? And some people, I think most people will choose to do really rad stuff with their freedom and their critical thinking, and including, going out in the world and sharing it with others, and then, using it in a professional way or in a helpful way to affect, our communities and societies. I'm already thinking kind of puristically of like, what would it be ideally if everyone was free? But the bottom line is that humans aren't free right now. Our heads are, from birth, we're crammed full of indoctrination and media and all these bad ideas, and we're never taught to think for ourselves. So we're raised in ideological slavery, and I mean, that's a big thing to say, right? But almost every single person I talk to has horrible ideas about what they think is healthy, where they get their happiness, where they derive happiness from, and all these things. And don't think I'm saying I have the answers. I'm not saying I have the answers here, but I know logic, and I know how to discern truth to a certain extent, and I know what these things are not, right? Like being forced to just work at a job you don't like, taking drugs to mitigate unpleasant feelings, getting other treatments that do the same thing, right? Living out the generational trauma and putting that on your family and your kids and others is not cool. That's not right. That's not what we want to do. It's not healthy. It's not happy. It's not healthy. So these kinds of things is what I'm talking about. That's what I hope to do with this podcast, right? Is to kind of give people a viewpoint where they can become more free. They can think for themselves and make the choices they want to, and their life will become a big experiment. The biggest trip in the world is once you decide to start thinking critically and to be free and to make decisions free of those bad ideas you had in the past or the indoctrination you had in the past. It's like, what the heck do you do now? And it's very strange and odd sometimes going against the grain that everybody else is going with. And all the normies are looking at you like, what are you doing? And then you see what they're doing doesn't make any sense, and you finally start doing something that makes sense. It's a very unnatural feeling. We're societal creatures. Us. You ever notice when someone smiles at you, like you automatically smile back? Something I do like all the time, and lately it's been making me feel weird. Like if I'm even in a bad mood and someone smiles at me, and I just smile back, I'm like, why did I smile back at that person? It's just inherent. It's reflexive. We are communal creatures, and I was told as a kid, like, hey, if you weren't born with it, you don't need it. Like you're born into this world like naked and alone, right? And that's all you need in life, and that's a big joke. You're not born naked and alone. You're born to a mother and a father, and you have their genetics, right? There's a tremendous amount of information that's passed to us through our genetics, and there's all this noise DNA that scientists don't know what it is. Well, scientists don't know what a lot of stuff is, but I can tell you through research and different anecdotes and narratives that I've seen that it's my belief that we actually get memories from our genetics. As a kid, there was this game I used to play in the water where I would spray water, like if water was running down my back, I'd use my finger to spray it out into different puddles and kind of like make different puddles bigger and smaller, and I had these different ideas about it, and just goofball kid stuff, right? Well, I was doing it once, and my dad asked me what I was doing. And I told him, and he said, I used to do that when I was a kid. I was like, no way, really? And to the letter, he was actually kind of telling me what I was thinking as I did it. And then, guess what? I saw my son doing the same thing, and I asked him about it. And same thing, exact same thing. And then I told him, hey, I think, this is evidence that these ideas are passed down through genetics, and it's super specific and individualistic. And there's other things too. There's other skills and talents that I've had that were passed down, right? But there's these memories, there's these feelings that I get in relation to these skills and abilities that that I have as well, that I've shared with my dad, and it's really amazing. It's far beyond coincidence. I mean, I hate puristic science because it doesn't allow for anything that science doesn't understand. But there's a whole universe of stuff that science doesn't understand out there. So that's where the podcast is kind of headed. And I think what I was getting to was, I was talking about current media and kind of the issues it's have. It's a very self-interested, self-involved thing. And so how do you mitigate that? What does it look like to get around that? What does it look like to do something that's meaningful to us as a harm community and as a community that's just trying to learn the truth? How do you get to the truth when everyone is trying to spin something and everyone's trying to control, a narrative, which is so frustrating. Like, almost everybody I know does it, and I really loathe it. It's like, why don't we just say the honest truth and our honest thoughts instead of, kind of trying to weasel people into thinking like us. So how do we do that, right? And do I have the perfect answer? No. But here's the thing, is that I'm 110% open to hearing what other people think about how to get to the answer. And I have all my lived experience and all the things I've observed to try to get there as well. So here's my idea. My idea is that I have people on the podcast that really, I'm open to anything. This is wide open. I'm not putting any caps on anything. I want everyone to hear honestly about the things that they want to share, one, and two, things that they want to hear about, or things that they didn't even know they want to hear about, that they end up wanting to hear about. So I know lots of people in the community that have really unique, incredible stories. A lot of them have some incredible hardship and difficulty in there, but they've also gained tremendous insight and wisdom from those things. And I want to have them on. I want to have people that I don't even know yet on, and I want them to share their unique perspectives. And not only that, I want to share my perspective with them. I want to get feedback on what they think of my perspective and what I think of theirs. And that has been a process that I've used my whole life to gain a more meaningful perspective, to understand things better. So there's so many things in my life as a kid I thought were one-dimensional. Like you look up in the sky and it's blue and that's it, right? And then as I went on to live my life, I'd run into people who would be like, that's actually just light diffraction of the different, stratum up there. And, if there's this change or that change, the colors change. And then you learn about the northern lights, and you learn about this magnetic interference that happens up there and all these different things, right? And then you learn that it's not that the sky is not blue, it's that it has a bunch of other colors. So it's not as if you were wrong or you didn't see the truth, but it's that there's a lot more truth out there to see, and it just gets more diverse, and we learn so much more. It just gets more beautiful. And then we use concepts that we've learned, like the sky being blue and physics, different things that affect it, and then you learn about, the human anatomy. You learn about lungs and respirating, and then you learn about the content of the atmosphere and how it makes your lungs big and small, and how other things can hurt your lungs, stuff like that. But I said an important word there, and it was diversity. So diversity is incredibly important in learning, because to me the most important thing is diversity of thought. Everyone thinks a little bit differently. And yet we only try to share the ideas that we think we have in common with other people. This is, in my mind, this is really destructive, right? Like a little while ago, I made a post on Facebook about wishing there was a show that had people that were getting to the end of their lives that could just tell important stories that I could listen to, because their perspective is incredibly valuable because they've gone through a lifetime of learning and they've learned really hard lessons, and then they get to share their perspective that really no one else can argue with, right? But they have a very diverse set of thoughts, or a very unique set of thoughts at the least, so as we absorb more and more of those thoughts that are different than ours, we're able to see things the way they really are, and then change or pivot our own thinking based on what we're learning, and it becomes a really, really powerful tool for us to go a lot further, learn a lot more, and be a lot more healthy and happy. I think the flip side of that, right, is hearing other people's narratives that people feel super informed, right, but they're cut off to the rest of the world. So this is the way some other podcasts are, right? You go on and say there's somebody that's a doctor, right? They start a podcast and they have this very scientific, medical narrative. And so they're going through and they're interviewing all these people, they're doing all this stuff, and they're just talking about the science behind everything, right? Not particularly helpful, right? They screen their guests. They pick the guests that are only going to be able to talk scientifically about stuff. They give their own thoughts. They do their own spins, and they just try and get confirmation from people. I mean, if you're lucky, they might learn a little bit about something new, but what are you learning new about in that? You're learning about some new science, or a new pill, or a new molecule, or a new supplement that it could potentially change things, or is a new concept, right? But how diverse is that thought, right? Oh, another supplement? You want me to try another one? Okay, I've tried a few thousand. I've spent tons of money on it. Haven't really benefited hardly at all. I have a ton of knowledge, right? But how is learning about another supplement getting me closer to understanding the big picture better, and helping me to have functional knowledge that allows me to make better choices going forward, or understand something better about my health, right? Or my thought processes, or my relationships, or anything else, right? There's all this stuff. And then in that way, those podcasts, and this reflects on the media as well, other media programs or whatever you're listening to, right? It's super narrow. And even if there is a diverse thought on there, they cap it, right? Like, no, we have to talk about a scientific narrative. If you try to tell me that meditation or not engaging in psychiatry is more healthy than trying this brand new drug that just came out that has all this promise, then I don't want you on my show. Or you know what, I'll put a little spin on it. So at the end I'll say, but you should always go listen to your doctor, and this advice is let's release ourselves from liability from it, and kind of put it in a box, right? Like, don't take it seriously. Like, what we need you to take seriously is listening to your doctor. I mean, what kind of advice is that? You don't know what kind of doctors people have or have access to. So how is someone going to go find help that way? You can't even be sure of that, right? A whole nother issue, but right, they're trying to control narrative, they're kind of control thought, and they're limiting diversity of thought in that way. Can we get a tremendous amount of diversity all at once? No, right? There's a limit. As human beings, I mean, initially, right, you're born onto this earth, and then you have these relationships with the people around you. It's very finite, it's very limited, right? Like, you absorb thoughts and ideas from the people around you because you interact with them, you do stuff together, you do work together, you have a good time together, right? And then you have this kind of, do you ever notice that about your childhood or your relationships? You start to get a person's voice inside your head that kind of informs your narrative. I have little idiosyncratic stuff about how I talk and the sayings that I use, and I can identify each and every one of them. I just give them out reflexively, I automatically say it, but I pick those up from different friends and people that I've run into throughout my life. And so these things stick with us. And it seems that human existence has this kind of routine of having a few people around you that you're learning from, and then you have other relationships, and they change and twist and turn, and you end up hanging around with different people, and you learn from them, and so on and so forth. Well, right, there's this limit, there's this cap, there's a few people that we can learn from at a time before we move on. Social media is scary because now, instead of having a few people around you that you can learn from and either distance yourself from or hold close to you, now you have 50, 100, 1,000 people that all have really important things to say that you're trying to get, you're trying to learn from, you're trying to get in touch with, you're trying to answer them, you're trying to, share your thoughts and ideas with them about it. It gets really dicey. So on the podcast, I see it as a really cool way to get diversity of thought by talking to lots of different kinds of people about different things. I don't care what we talk about. We could talk about anything. Hopefully I have people on that I know their story really, really well. And hopefully they want to come on and talk about something different, or at least a different perspective about their experience. Some people have big, changes in their faith while they're going through this stuff. Some people are pushed away from faith while they're going through this stuff. Some people have big kind of scientific or physiological breakthroughs in understanding diet and human activity. Some people have huge, kind of epiphanies about human relationships and trauma from the past. The human experience is just, it's vast. And there's so many different perspectives, which means there's so much helpful diversity of thought that's out there. That's probably a lot more successful than our own that we can stand to hear about. So that's what I'd like to do. I wish I still wasn't injured. I wish I was fine, but even this morning I just felt crushed, and then I worked through that, which was fine. But it feels kind of daunting. I know a bunch of people that I should have on here, but I'm going to try really hard at the best pace that I can to get people on and to get this candid conversation going and to share it with everybody out there. So to that end, if you have something, you have a particularly important story to share, you have a very different kind of thought process, or not, right? Or if there's something special that you learned that, man, I'm really trying to avoid. I'm oversaturated with stuff in the media that's useless, right? I don't want to think like everybody else. I don't want to hear the same thing from my friends that I hear on the media all the time. It kind of discourages me, honestly. So if you have a different perspective or a different way you're thinking about things that's not being shared out there, that's what I want to hear about. That's what has value to me, right? And I think to everybody else. But just, I don't have to value what you have to say to have you on. And that's ultimately what I was trying to get back to, is when you listen to other people's podcasts, when you watch the news, when you do all this stuff, what don't you see? Let you think about that for a second. I don't see people like me. I don't see people that are open, honest, and candid, right? I always see this narrow conversation. It has to be, again, about what they want to talk about, blah, 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 right? I don't get anything helpful from looking in the media anymore. I watch the news, hear the same thing, see the same things. I watch shows. It's cool, it's action, or it's not, or it's comedy, or whatever, but it's the same thing. I'm hearing the same punchlines from these people with different words. I'm so tired of it. I don't want it. So that's what you're not going to get here. That's what I don't want, right? I'm not ruling out anything. If there's something important out there that sounds familiar to everything else, it's totally fine. If it's important, we'll cover it, or we'll try to get it out to everybody that's listening. But what I'm looking for is narratives and viewpoints and ideas, discussions, and experiences from people that, I'm going to say like us, that are open to the truth and open to anything, and not right, James, I don't want to hear what you have to say. This is the way I think's right, and you're wrong, right? I know you feel this way about TMS, but actually you're wrong and it's this way. How about we talk about both sides and then just let people think what they want to think about the truth, right? How about you share all the information that you have about it? I share all the information I have, and we discuss what's relevant and what's not and why, and that's enough. Man, we don't have to. No one. Where do we get this idea that someone has to be right and wrong? Do you know how many arguments I've walked away from having shamed someone else and been like, I'm right, you're wrong, and this is why, only to walk away and think about it for 30, 45 minutes and be like, I was wrong. That person was trying to tell me something that was right, that was better. They had much better perspective than me. They just couldn't articulate it to me, or they were frustrated and they were saying mean things instead of trying to, communicate more clearly about what I needed to understand about what I was doing or what they were doing or whatever. Do you know how many times that's happened? It's happened to me a lot. And I've always adjusted my life accordingly afterwards. Like, you know what? Sometimes you need to slow down and think through stuff, and maybe you need to be thinking about what information you need to hear from someone else and how to get there, rather than you just making them see things your way. Right? It's a mind blower. There's again, this is the whole purpose of the podcast. This is the whole purpose about what I'm doing. It's because when I went through my injury, I realized there are massive flaws in the way our society is moving, right? Everyone is interested in being right all the time. Everyone is interested in having their viewpoint the most popular. Is there any commonalities in this kind of stuff? Yeah, the commonality is no one wants to have the best and most healthy and viewpoint or be right or be trying to have everyone else benefit from the things that they say, right? That's not it. I'm trying to sell you a supplement. I might tell you, hey, you know what? This is the healthiest thing for you, and this will change your life. It'll get rid of your anxiety and depression. It's just $25.99. Hit my website, right? I'm not trying to benefit you in that scenario. I'm trying to benefit my pocketbook, right? Or I'm even trying to idealistically benefit this supplement movement, or this therapy movement, or this pseudoscience movement, or TMS, or ECT, or benzodiazepines, right? Or this mental health movement. Hey, let's get everybody talking about their mental health. This is what we see in media in Hollywood, right? And then almost all those people get funneled into hospitals or a suicide hotline or a group that's funded by pharma, and then they're funneled to psychiatry because, it's important to identify these mental health issues and accept them, which it's very important to accept how everyone thinks and feels. That's fine. But then we're shoving people onto a slippery slope where now all of a sudden that means that you fit a DSM definition and there's a drug for that, and you can just take these drugs until you can figure out the rest. You notice that there's no answers for those DSM definitions of why you have a mental illness. There's no answer in there, right? Like in other medical stuff, it's like you break your arm, and then the goal is to set it, to get it back into place, and to cast it, and avoid destroying ligaments and nerves and veins and arteries in that process, right? There's all this stuff, about how to get it back right? I don't see any of that in the DSM. They don't say, they're talking about all this stuff that's messed up about people, and there's nothing about what's right with people, right? It's just saying, if your life is impacted, if you can't work because of these things, then it's a problem. But you could have the same problem, but not have a job and be perfectly fine. Or people that are around you have relationships with, don't care that you're acting in a certain way, and now it's not a problem. I got problems with that. Like that's not making sense. But neither is everybody else. All the other people that are trying to sell you something, or get you to think like them, or get your vote, or get you to believe what they believe. I'm not vibing on that. Like, that's in. this was a really big thing for me a while ago. And I realized that, and I've stuck with it. It's one of those thoughts that have stuck with me, is that unless someone else is really trying to help you out, right? Unless someone asks an extra question, right? Say you're walking through the mall, right? And someone's like, hey, I can't even think of something dumb, like the stuff in the mall, right? Like, hey, your complexion looks oily, right? Like I have a product that will change that, right? Then your skin will look better. Unless you're asking me about my life and trying to learn about who I am as a person, it's pretty fair to understand that you're not really trying to help me out, right? There's all kinds of logical problems with trying like a one-stop shop, a one solution. Say like, I see someone that I can get to sell something. I think they may have this problem, but before you even confirm that that's the true source of the problem, you're already trying to sell them something, right? Is that to say there's enough time for everyone to stop and hear everyone else's problems? No, there's not. But you can guarantee that there was a period in history, probably a long, long, long time ago, where there was enough time to do all that. And everyone did know what was up with each other, and they took care of each other, and everyone was responsible for each other and looking out for each other, and it worked. Now we're so far down the rabbit hole. We are so far into Wonderland. Everyone thinks it's normal. Everyone thinks it's cool to say hi to someone, and not know anything about them. To hang out with people, you don't even know if they want to kill you. You don't know if they want to roofie you. You don't know if they want to be your best friend. You don't know if they care about you, if they love you. You don't know any of this stuff, right? It's because we are systematically indoctrinated to not care about what's going on in people's hearts. I see so many things going on out there where people are judging other people. They're like, hey, you're racist. You're a bigot, like you're a hateful person, you're this kind of person, you're that kind of person. And like, I gotta laugh, man. Like, there's some serious stuff going on, even violence and all kinds of other things that, like, you look at it and you're like, this is serious. Like, that person hates that other person, right? How do you know that? I don't know that. When I see these people act, I see hurt, right? I see pain in the person that's acting. The person that's acting violently, or the person that's screaming and raging and freaking out, or the person that can't control themselves, right? I see hurt and harm there. I see in that person something different, right? Like, I don't see bigotry and, all kinds of different hatred towards others. I see that hatred for themselves. I see problems. I see generational trauma. I see like addiction. I see other stuff, but I sure as heck don't know what's on that person's heart or their mind, right? You could say if they make certain remarks or whatever, you can think, okay, some part of their consciousness is engaged in this ideological behavior, right? But you don't know. You have no idea. You don't know if they were talked into that stuff. You don't know if they started believing it 5 minutes ago. You don't know if it's a lifelong thing. You don't know if they were raised that way. You don't know anything, right? And even if you think you know, guess what? You don't, right? I have people that I've known my whole lives that I talk to every day, and I'm learning something new about them every day. They're telling me stuff about their childhood or what happened a month ago that I didn't have any clue about. The only person that knows about what's going on in your head is you. And even that, sometimes, we don't. We're confused. We don't get it. We got subconscious stuff going on. We don't even know. We got to bring it to the surface and figure it out, right? So if I can't even know what's going on inside me entirely and completely, how can someone else, right? Some people observe us and they see how we act and they predict our behavior and they're like, I know you better than you know yourself, right? To some superficial degree, that might be true, right? About something that doesn't matter. But to say that they really know you, no. Not a chance, not even close. We're all way too wonderful, unique, and amazing, considering science knows like 1% or less about the human brain, right? To ever know what's up with a human, right? Like, we are way too awesome to ever be able to understand what's going on. So, circling back again, right? What are we looking for in media, right? What are we looking for with the people around us? Or on other people's podcasts, right? Are they having people from their communities on there that are speaking candidly. You ever listen to a podcast or watch a show and have someone pop up that says something and you're like, what was that? I have no idea what this guy's talking about. This is something new to me. It doesn't even make sense, right? It has nothing to do with the show. It has nothing to do with this conversation, but they're throwing some idea out there that makes people think. When's the last time you saw that happen? No. But I tell you what, a lot of the people that I've met and I've had conversations with, they throw that stuff out there. I'll be talking to them about whatever, and they'll be like, hey, did you ever consider this? Hey, did you ever have this happen to you before? Hey, have you ever seen this before? And I'm like, wait, what? What did you just say? You saw a UFO? No way. What did it look like? What was the color? Like, what else happened? What sounds did it make? Right? They're like, yeah, man, I saw this thing when I was 5. It flew over the hill, blew the roof off my house. It was crazy, but I don't talk about it because I think people think I'm crazy when I talk about it. No way. We finally became good enough friends where you knew that I just appreciate everything you have to say, whether it was hurtful to me or not. Like all of it's an opportunity for me to understand you better and for me to understand myself better. Okay. Interesting. When's the last time you saw stuff like that? So what's my point? My point is, this is how we can gauge what's real and what's true and what's not. At least to a certain degree, right? That stuff could be faked, it could be staged, right? But that would be a lot of effort for someone to go through, say if they did have it on there, right? To try to gain authenticity, right? Someone could go to those lengths, but it's probably not going to benefit them, right, when they're pushing a narrative. However, in our situation, having kind of a media platform as this podcast where we can get on here and talk about our experiences, and I don't want to hear any particular thing from you and you don't want to hear any one particular thing from me, and we can just talk through this stuff and everybody else can benefit from our experiences and our thoughts. My hypothesis is that if we all share these thoughts the way we're kind of naturally supposed to, right, in kind of indigenous, non-influenced environments, like everyone would get together and just talk because they didn't get anything better to do, right? So everyone would share narratives and share ideas and share perspectives, and then I'm pretty sure people are going to come to the conclusion, hey, this is helpful here, this isn't helpful there, and you grow this kind of social consciousness. But the key about that social consciousness, when it's honest and genuine and it's diverse, it becomes powerful. People start understanding things quicker, they believe things quicker, they can help themselves quicker. It's this community of knowledge that becomes way more powerful than the sum of its parts. And this is what I've seen in the community. When I first came into it, I'll tell you, I believed in psychiatry, I believed in the chemical imbalance theory to some degree. I had my doubts about it, but when I came into this community, I started meeting people that were like, dude, that's rubbish. Like the way you're thinking is ridiculous rubbish. And I'm like, I don't like you. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear someone tell me that I'm an idiot, because I'm not an idiot. And I think you're an idiot. Right? That was the feeling that hit me every single time. And I still get hit with that feeling, right? But I've learned to circumvent that feeling. I'm like, if I'm getting that feeling, there's something else that's here. There's something else that I need to hear about. And so when I was pretty sure I was going to die every single day I'd wake up, I started thinking about things a little bit differently. And that was one. I had a friend of mine, an incredible friend, was like, you need to read these books. You need to read Anatomy of an Epidemic. And you need to read Peter's book, Dangerous Medicines and Organized Crime. She's like, you got to read it. Like, I'm telling you, because she was ranting and raving about all this stuff about pharma and how they do things and psychiatry. And I knew it was true because I had seen all the stories. And now I'm meeting people and I'm talking to them. I'm seeing all the fallout and all the damage and all the harm. So I know it's true, but I don't understand why. And I'm thinking I'm crazy at this point. So I'm like, something's off here, right? Like either I'm nutty and I'm not seeing things right, or I'm right, but I don't know why I'm right. I don't know how I'm right. So I need to understand. And so she told me about these books a few times, and then I got to a point I couldn't read at that point because it hurt. It actually physically hurt to read after TMS because of the traumatic brain injury that it inflicted, and I didn't know what to do. So I was like, but I need to read these books. I know that I need to read these books. So I just broke down. I bought the books, and they're on my nightstand, and I was like, I'm reading them. And this is it. This is the most important thing I have going on in my life right now. This is it. And I don't know which one. I think I read Peter's book first, but I opened it up and I started reading. I read like a sentence or two, and I'm like feeling dizzy and bad. But just reading those few sentences, because it explained everything that I wanted to know, I had a burning desire to just read more. So I read until I couldn't read anymore. The first time I read, it wasn't even probably a paragraph. I might have gotten to a paragraph, but by the time I was at the end of the paragraph, I was in such a cognitive stupor that I couldn't even remember. So the next time I picked it up, I think I had to reread that paragraph or read the second half of that paragraph again. And that's how I started. But every day I would read it because I was so eager to read. And then sure enough, by the time I finished Peter's book, I was reading, a few pages at a time was the most I could do. Whereas when I started, all I could really do well was read a sentence or two. And then by the time I was done with Bob's book, Anatomy of an Epidemic, I felt like I was back on a quasi-normal ability to read. And so that's crazy, right? The ideas in those books healed my perspective and gave me hope that I knew what I was seeing. I knew what I was seeing was real. I had a real basis in reality. I wasn't nutty, right? So it healed my faith in myself and my ability to understand these things, but it also healed my ability to read, right? Repetitively doing this stuff, neuroplasticity, like it gave me the ability to read again, and it was really amazing and transformative. But the point was, it was a person that was telling me basically that I didn't know what I was talking about, and there was something more going on that I didn't understand, right? It's an assault to your senses. It's an assault to your ego. But when I got over that, right, and I listened to my community, and after that, everything was different after that. That was the inception moment. After that, I started listening to everything everyone else had to say. I don't care if it just was straight dangerous or didn't make sense. I wanted to understand that from the beginning and to the end. And at the end, if I got to it and was like, wow, that really was just as dangerous as I thought it was, then that's fine. No one got hurt. All I'm doing is learning this stuff and understanding. But I had the knowledge, and I ran it through, and I worked it through, and I had the experience. So when other people came to me like, hey, is this treatment cool? I'd be like, no, that's dangerous. This person will tell you that it's great, right? People will say, ECT saved my life. Getting shocked into a seizure saved your life. Okay. Like, I understand how it works. I understand the narrative. I understand why scientists are using it, doctors are using it, and I understand the harm pretty well, right? But when someone says it saves my life, I didn't understand that, right? So I had to find someone, and someone was telling me it saved my life. So I talked to them. What happened? They were in severe depression, like for a long time, chronic depression for like years. And then they finally got so desperate they did an ECT. They had a short round of it. They had I think they were feeling better after the first treatment. They had a total of 4 treatments, and the doctor wanted to do more, and they said, no, that's it, I'm done, right? So they had that instinct that this is not something you just keep doing, right? So they got out of their depression, and essentially they wanted to end their lives. The depression was so bad, so they're out of the depression, right? They can claim it saved them their lives. I get it. From that perspective, ECT saves lives. It also does a tremendous amount of harm. We know there's a tremendous amount of neurological damage that happens. You're predisposing yourselves to neurodegenerative diseases. There's a huge cost for that, right? There's a huge cost to a lot of stuff we do. if there's a gunman in a building shooting people up and you're a law enforcement officer and you have a gun, you can go into that building and save everybody else in that building by killing that gunman or restraining them or whatever, right? But guess what? Your risk factors just went through the freaking roof, right? There's a significant chance that you're going to get killed going into that building. Is it a good decision? Maybe, right? I'm not saying ECT is a good decision. It's a horrible decision because you don't even have the chance of coming out of that one clean. Like, I don't think that's worth any cost. No matter how suicidal you may feel, I don't think it's worth it. That's my perspective. And I can say that's what I would do. It doesn't matter how bad I have extremely painful thoughts and emotions. I have akathisia I still experience. As far as I know, it's the most brutal thing in human experience. I would never do ECT to try to mitigate that. I'd rather lay on the ground for the rest of my life and not move. Obviously, I feel strongly, right? TMS is closely relatable. But this person claimed to save their life. So there was something to learn from that, right? I learned how and why she felt that way. I learned, and then afterwards, we talked, I said, how are you doing now? She's not great, right? She's not in a good spot. It gave her temporary relief. She's still in a hard spot, right? Like, it didn't fix the problems of her life. It didn't fix her trauma. It didn't fix the cause of that stuff. No matter all the different people I meet, I always meet someone that's willing to consider ECT or TMS, right? People want to get better. They don't want to pay a price for it, but they want to get better. And a lot of people think they can skate on the consequences. Guess what? A lot of people do skate on the consequences, at least overtly, right? But I think a lot of us know that there's a cost to be paid. With TMS, people skate on the first round. I didn't skate. Severely injured. My brain super jacked. First round. Good friends of mine, they made it to the second round. First round, they were fine. They went back because, again, it doesn't fix the problem. It's nowhere near fixing the problem. It's not possible for TMS to fix the problem. It's not physiologically or philosophically possible to fix your emotional state with a physiological treatment like TMS. Right? They skate. Then second time around, they get jammed up. Now they got TBI. Now all kinds of unpleasant stuff's happening, right? Some people make it to the third round and then they get jammed up. Same thing with ECT. Guess what? Same thing with psych drugs, right? First time I took them, it was really unpleasant, but I didn't have any after effects, right? Second time I took them, I got akathisia, like when I started taking Lexapro, and then I took it for a while. Then I started having withdrawal after I took it for a few months. Serious stuff. I had the brain lightning and the zapping. Right? And then once I was done with that, I'm like, I can't go back here. Like, I could never go back. My dad told me a long time ago that it would be stupid to go down that path in the first place. Don't do it. Don't ever do it. He was right. I was wrong. Right? But I learned from it. And another interesting thing about perspectives and diverse thought, right? If you hear it, it's not going to hurt, right? But you always make the decision on what you do with the information. You always pick and choose. You are always responsible for what happens to you. You're always responsible for your actions, whether that's in regards to your health or something else. If a doctor says, take this drug, you'll be fine, and it doesn't work out, legally he may have liability for the harm that is incurred from that, right? And he does have a responsibility, ethically, morally, legally, for what he did, right? But you're paying the cost. Maybe I'm kind of wild, but since TMS, I used to think we could, put responsibility in different places or avoid responsibility, but I no longer think that. TMS transformed me. Everyone is responsible for everything they do 110% of the time. Is there different societal definitions of responsibility? Sure, that's fine. I don't care. There's legal responsibility, civil and criminal, and that's good. That's a good thing, right? We can certainly do things that we should have to pay for in terms of how it affects other people, right? But when you're talking about yourself and your own body, your decision, that's it. Even if someone's telling you they're going to take responsibility for you, they can't. They cannot suffer on your behalf. But I'm digressing. I think maybe it was a good one. So the point, the community perspectives. We all live, work in communities. It's always been that way. There's no definition of man that doesn't involve community. Is there people that have gone off on their own for a long time? Yeah, and I admire that. It's legit. I know people that can operate 110% on their own, right? But they're always coming back for some sort of community at some point. It does matter to them. They can convince you it doesn't, but just give it a little bit of time. You'll see what happens. So the important thing is the community perspective, and that's what I want to give on this podcast. And I want to learn just as much from other people as they learn from me. I want everybody that's listening to learn a ton from everything that happens on here. And I want people that listen to really think about what a genuine experience sounds like and looks like, right? The same thing with scientific studies. How do I know scientific studies are crap? I'll tell you. One, the hypothesis is proved, or nothing. We don't learn anything new from the study, right? Or they're like, oh, I think this is going to happen. I'm going to study it, and then they meet their criteria. Nah, I don't believe it. High amount of skepticism, because I've been a part of a lot of experiments. I've talked to a lot of scientists. I've been a part of the scientific method in all kinds of different things, lots of different ways, and something unexpected always happens. It always happens. You always end up at a different conclusion than you set out for, and that's science. And science is rad. That purely logical, objective observation about what's happening around us and what's happening to us is a super rad thing. But it is always a surprise. There's always something that we learn, right? And that's the nature of life, right? And then we go to a higher kind of truth on that. That's the nature of life. That's the way it works out, right? Nothing is perfectly repeatable, right? All matter is always moving, and it's always changing, and it's always interacting. There's an infinite number of variables in every single transaction of life. So it always leads to a varied outcome. There's no vacuum perfect enough. There's no relationship perfect enough. There's no person's perspective that's perfect enough to get around that. So we see a reflection of that in our conversations, right? And what people say and do. Sometimes it's unsettling. Sometimes it's unpleasant. Sometimes we hear things and it pisses us off. Sometimes we hear things and we're brought to tears. We're sad. It's hard to hear, right? It's hard to hear what people are going through. It's hard to hear all the trauma they've been through. It's hard to hear them come out of a situation with a warped perspective that they hate everybody and everything because of the horror they went through, right? But there's something to be learned from all that. One, we open our eyes up to the truth and we can see what's really going on out there. And two, the information that's gained from it and the other person's perspective on it is invaluable as well. It's invaluable because you can mix that with your own experience and all the other experiences you hear to come up with a unique idea, perspective, and outlook that can be really, really dynamic and beautiful and wonderful. You can use it to help others. Someone tells you about something horrible, and then you run into someone that's been some way similar, and you can see the effects on their body and their mind and their relationships, and you can talk to it. And you can learn more, and you can give a person peace and comfort knowing that you're honest about it, and you want to learn about it, and you understand it, and that learning from others is a pretty critical part of life, and you're not interested in just throwing your stuff out there, right? How valuable is it, like, hey, this is what I learned from someone else, when you communicate to that someone? You automatically cut out that self-interested part of the conversation, right? When someone's like, hey, this is what you need to do, right? You don't drive right. Stop tailgating. It's not right. Right? How many times have you heard stuff like that? What does it make you want to do? I hate you. Get out of the car. I don't want you in the car. I don't want to be around you. Right? Maybe you don't feel that way. That's great. That's how I'll reflexively feel always about it. Right? But lately been working on it. Right? I'm like, you know what? You're right. I didn't want to receive the information in the way you sent it to me, but you're right. I could drive safer. So I'd urge you to think about what you're hearing and seeing in media and even in your relationships and ask, is it true, right? Are these different variables about community and honesty and learning that you're picking up, do they match what you're seeing? Are people trying to be even-handed with you? Are they trying to have open thoughts? Or is it prefixed? Is it loaded? Do you hear everybody saying the same phrase over and over and over again? Right? Are people talking heads? That lots of people have come to me with really wise stuff that I had already heard 20 times in other places. And guess what? It was lost on me, right? I'm like, this person's telling me this, but they don't understand it because they can't relate it in their own way. I forget what it was. I don't know if Einstein said it or somebody else. But, if you can't repeat an idea simplistically in your own language to somebody, it shows a lack of understanding. And I found that to be true. Like some complicated things with ECT and TMS, I can usually, kind of summarize it in a really succinct, simple way and just pass it out to people because I've been studying it for a long time. Right? And some things about it or other stuff, I have to kind of explain all these different details and they're kind of swirling in my head, and then all of a sudden my explanation gets really long and weird. And I may end up in the right place, but the point is I haven't worked with it long enough. I don't have the experience to understand how it flows together, because everything flows together. Again, like learning about the sky, learning about physics, learning about the body, right? At a certain point, say I'm out for a run, right? Instead of thinking about my run and how hard it is, I start thinking about the physics. I'm thinking about how hard is the concrete underneath my feet? How soft is the dirt? What's the tread life on my shoes? What's the temperature out here? What's in the air? Like, is this fall? Is there allergies? Is there pollens in the air? All these different stuff. And then I realize, like, the workload my body's under, how much snot's running out of my nose, like if my mouth is dry, all these different things are just flowing with the environment. And when I understand it well, and I've been working at it for a long time, any one thing that I experience or see tells me 50 other things about my reality and what's going on. And so that's a good place to maybe kind of wrap it up. But that's where I'm looking at for the podcast. Like, with TMS, I started out, I thought when I got hurt, I looked on the internet, there was no stories about TMS injury out there that I could find. There was not a word about the side effects and the harm. I thought I was cuckoo bananas. I thought that I was the one exception to being hurt by TMS. That's what I believed, right? But then I went out and I started talking to people and I started hearing the stories and I started seeing the commonalities, and I realized, all right, keep talking. I kept talking to people. The picture grew, and guess what? The commonalities grew. And again, I ended up with this flow. I saw everybody's got this stuff in common. Everyone's also an individual, and they have some variations, but we're all carrying these core things. And then those individual variations, they crop up in other places with different people with different physiology. The human body is so diverse. The worst thing that I can think of is coming up with a medical paradigm that treats everybody the same. It's the most disastrous opportunity for harm that I've ever heard of, right? But initially it was appealing. But when I started to understand people and their stories and how they interact with medicine and how they interact with treatments, supplements, diets, food, exercise, and I saw how diverse it was, I started realizing if we use this as a uniform treatment paradigm, again, supposedly scientific, I'm going to argue that it's antithetical to science inherently. But The scientific model tries to keep all the variables the same, tries to keep everybody the same, right? And this is how we're going to treat people. Bad idea. Horrible idea, right? And now if you vary your approach and try to tailor it to people individually, you're probably going to come out with better outcomes, right? You're going to have less diverse outcomes, in my opinion, likely, right? But if you treat everybody the same and try to give everybody the same treatment, now you're going to have a really diverse outcome of harm, right? Diversity in outcome is not good, right? Because you want one outcome. You want them to be better, right? You want people to have improvement. You want people to be happier, healthier, right? That's singular. But we're seeing diverse outcomes. What does that mean? Like, there's a lot of room for error in diverse outcome in the medical world. Anyways, I digress again. But that's what we're looking at here. My hope for the podcast, if I could keep it going, and everything goes the way I want, we're going to hear a lot of diverse thoughts, but we're going to see a picture of truth come out of all those diverse thoughts. And I know a lot of people that I know out there have already picked this up. They're already seeing it. But I think we can go a lot deeper. I think we can learn a lot more from each other, and I think it'll be a lot more amazing. So that gives you an idea of what I'm thinking about and where I'm headed. I had other stuff I wanted to talk about, but I was vibing on this. I've been overthinking the podcast for a while and coming up with topics and trying to articulate all these thoughts and then get them down and put them out. But I don't want to do that. I want there to be a lot of candid stuff on the cast. I don't even want to edit it that much. I want to just have a conversation and just throw it out there so people can just get it often and frequently. Same word I used twice. And if to be candid and people to understand that it is candid and there's value to that. The other thing I don't like about media is what is it? It's all been produced and edited to where I feel like I'm watching a movie. A movie's fake, right? But I don't want to feel fake in every part of my life. All the different media that I see, all the stuff I get exposure to, I don't want to feel like it's fake. I mean, when I was a kid, it was cool. There were cartoons. It was fantastical, right? Even fantastical stuff, it can feel like it's fake. That's fine, right? But the ideas I'm getting off other people, the narratives, the perspectives, feeling fake's not good. I don't want a chopped up, perfect, tailored 5-minute message, hard-hitting message without any of the detail behind it, the truth behind it, right? I want something where I can understand, see, and hear what people are going through and how they come to those conclusions. Like the scientists that are spitting out some perspective on a new drug or a new treatment or whatever, I don't want to hear about your outcomes. I want to hear how you got there. I want to hear what you learned from it. I want to hear what you learned from your participants, from the people that experience things in the study or whatever. That's what I want to hear. I can pretty much bet on what I'm already going to hear the outcome to be once I heard what the study was. Yeah, so I want to aim to do something different, something that has meaning, and then we can see how and why it's going to have meaning, and we can see how and why we can expect to get meaning out of others and other places. Doesn't mean it's always true. Nothing's always true, right? But it means a lot of this stuff, figuring a lot of this stuff out is going to get a lot easier for us if we share all of our thoughts and opinions and experiences. It's huge deal to me. To me, I've seen it as the key to what I was missing before my injury as opposed to after my injury. Okay, I'm going to drop this thing. I'm not even going to edit it. I'm just going to throw it out. People can listen to it. So to that end, if you want to reach out and do it, let me know what you think. Let me know if you want to share your story. I don't even have it figured out how I'm going to capture the stories yet. I have an idea on how I want to do it. I think it'll work. I think we'll be fine. I know how to do it. I just haven't actually done it yet. So, yeah. And I'm not looking, again, to edit the heebie-jeebies out of this thing. I'm looking for us to have a conversation and then to put it out there. If you don't want the conversation to go out after we've had it, that's fine. It's totally cool. But if you have something important you want to say, we can talk through it and you're open to just having a conversation and throwing it out to the community. If you're vibing on what I'm saying in this podcast, essentially, let me know and we can go from there. I got plenty of other people that I want to try to convince to come on because they got really incredible stories. and their thought processes and the way they think as a person is just so incredible to me and so stimulating, and it's helped me so much through my life post TMS that I can't even express it. I'm super excited to get some people on here that, to me, just again, every time I talk to them, they blow my mind. So that's where we're at. I hope everybody's doing well. Man, if I could, I'd love to get on a cadence where I could throw out like one a week or something for everybody. Again, I wouldn't have the time to do a bunch of editing, so the least we can edit, the easier it'll be to throw it out like in succession. Also depends on me feeling better too. But let's see how it goes. Whatever, I don't care. I'm tired of overthinking things. I'm tired of letting feeling bad hold me back from this stuff. So this is my effort. I think I set the stage for it. If we can all stand being candid with each other and just rolling with stuff, it'll keep things on the right track. I think from a virtue perspective, from an honesty perspective, a transparency perspective, but then everything lines up behind that. I don't have to spend a bunch of time kind of a track cutting things out or trying to feel good about stuff. I can just roll with it and throw it out. And the really cool thing I'm looking forward to is seeing how we come together as a community to do this stuff. How willing are we to hear our open and honest, uncut thoughts with each other and just roll with it? Is it a thing? Can it stand? Can we do it? Let's see. I'm curious. All right, guys, I hope everybody's well. Hang in there and take care. I hope to hear from you soon.